What's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of Rugby Swag. My name is GiftTime and you are here at the show where we are here about building the ecosystem of rugby while also talking to the people who have taken advantage, created, or found opportunities via rugby. Y'all, we have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about a lot of things happening that just went down. I can't wait, but first, intro.
I think the minute I stepped on a practice field for rugby, the calling happened.
An 8-year plan to be on the team. And I was in it within 2 years.
Don't wait until you are a pro to be a pro, right?
And I walk around with a rugby ball sometimes and they're like, what is this child on?
It looks like it was a heavy hit.
It's up, it's not up.
You know, that's the first time I played like professional.
I'm making rugby money. How can I make money outside of it?
And there's two Scottish guys, and I said, "Oh, you're here for the movie."
That rugby is a game for all shapes and sizes, all cultural aspects.
He looked at me and he says, "You guys are awesome."
Welcome back, y'all. We have an amazing one. I'm excited for this show. Some great talking points. I'm not going to lie. It's always great to be able to say that there's some solid rugby news that's not necessarily just gameplay that's happening. And we got some really solid rugby news that's happening. But before I get started with that, I want to let you guys know, please, if you can, go ahead and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Or if you're listening on the audio, please follow us on Apple, Spotify, Anchor.fm, Amazon Music, iHeartMedia, wherever it is that you're listening to it. I want you to get in. Not only does it help us be able to create and have an idea of what we are reaching out to, but it also lets you be able to know when we have new episodes coming through. And of course, the other thing, we want you to share it with your friends. If there's something you find interesting, let your friends know. Say, hey, there's some rugby swag that I want you to know about. Let's go over there and go take a listen. It might help you out. And if you guys are like, hey, I disagree with everything you say, hey, you show your friends what you disagree with, and then you properly comment and engage and, say things. And if you need to know who you need to go and link and mention to, you can actually mention us on Instagram at Rugby Swag Show, or you can find us on Twitter at GiftTime Rugby, or on Facebook at GiftTime Rugby, or on TikTok at GiftTime Rugby, all right? So I just want you to know you got places to complain or praise, either way. And, of course, leaving comments in the Apple Podcast is always a big plus. But, yes, guys, I want to thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be able to talk to you each and every week on multiple facets, and this is not going to be anything new in that. So let's get this baby started. First up, dude, I want to say this is top of the rugby news for us today. Easily might be, maybe not the biggest news, but I feel like it's the biggest news. USA Rugby has announced that they are adding some interim coaches. That is Scott Lawrence and Richard Ashfield are going to be taking over as the interim coaches for the foreseeable future for USA Rugby men's and women's team. Now, Richard Ashford, I'm not going to lie, I don't know very much about him. This is just, it is what it is. But Scott Lawrence, oh, that is a legend. And honestly, I feel like it's something that's been a long time coming. And it's always been interesting why he hasn't done it. If you don't know, Scott Lawrence initially was a head coach and director of rugby for Life University. He was the former head coach and basically low-key director of rugby for Rugby Atlanta MLR team. Of course, he's also been the U20s USA Rugby head coach as well. Won Rugby World Trophy for the Junior World Cup, the Junior World Trophies to that effect. Like, this man's got a history of winning. When you talk about a guy who is a winner, this is a winner. And Scott Lawrence has been shown consistent success. Now, that being said, outside of Life University, I guess even Americans, but in MLR, he never quite took it over the top. But he's always been right there in the middle. Tough nose, kind of defensive guy, but has a proficient offense with his rugby teams. Like, they're always tough teams. There's undoubtedly have always been tough teams. I think some of the best success that Life University had was under Scott Lawrence. And so I find this to actually be a unique situation, only in the fact that I never really understand why he was never considered. He's an American coach. Obviously, he lives in the country. He's worked for USA Rugby. He's had a pretty solid history of being able to win at almost all the levels. We haven't seen him at the top level, but I am uniquely interested as to why it's taking this long. And even at this, it's simply just the interim tag. So, they're basically saying we're just placeholding you until future notice. But are we going to have enough games between now and when future notice is to take over? Or does he even really want it? These are all the questions, but I think we'll find them out as time goes on. But for whatever it's worth, I think this is a great situation. I'm thinking that Scott has been able to earn this position for all this time. And for what we need to do for USA Rugby in terms of our elite teams, and this is for the 15s teams, if I didn't mention this correctly, if we at least need to consider the fact that we need time. Like, we need time to be able to see how this all works out. Do we even have another coach that's in mind that we're looking to? I know, again, I talked about it the other week. There's talks about World Rugby trying to step in and do some maneuvering in the space, but still, like, why not we roll with this for a little bit and see what we can do? Players know who he is. He's got a great reputation. And we can see there will be at least strategically growth. I think he's widely considered one of the most strategic rugby coaches in the country right now. But again, is he going to be taking us to a Rugby World Cup finals? Good. I think it's to be determined. But I'm happy to see that he has at least a chance. And I'm really interested to see what our actual game scheduling is going to be, because between now and the actual Rugby World Cup, a lot of the top teams are going to be winding down their heavy starters, but they're still going to be trying to, get some warm-up games here and there, which would be an opportunity, but we're not going to be seeing their best. It kind of reminds me of 2019, whenever we had South Africa and Australia over at RFK Stadium in D.C., and it was just like a whatever game, because it was basically just the second and third stringers playing, because everybody was just prepping for the Rugby World Cup. Nobody wants to get injured before the biggest setup of matches, and obviously that worked out very well for South Africa, as they got to win. But what are we going to be able to see? And I personally don't think that there's a coach that's out there that would be able to take on the responsibilities and understanding that comes with the U.S., because it's been said ad nauseum, we are a very complicated situation based almost solely on the size of our country. Look, it's hard to be, the fifth largest country? Third largest country in the world? Yeah, the third most populous country in the world. And the two that are above us don't really play rugby that much, though they're trying. So this is a unique situation that comes with a lot of baggage to it. And for what it's worth, I think Scott will be able to do it. Now, when it comes to Richard, from what I'm reading, shout out to Matt McCarthy on Rugby Wrap Up. He's definitely been a coach for Stanford and a coach for Beantown, which is, if I remember correctly, I don't remember correctly. Beantown is Boston, so he's done some WPL stuff. He has been an assistant coach for the Women's Eagles since 2013. So, I mean, he's been there. I feel like this one, again, not knowing very much about him, I feel like this is a situation of, let's transition from Rob Kane to somebody that the women are familiar with. That one, I don't know if this is the best coach that's available for it. But from the men's side, I definitely feel the most confident for Scott Lawrence. Again, depending on if this is something that he wants to do, because I feel like this has to be the only reason why he hasn't gotten it to this point. So we'll see how it goes from there. But I really want to know what our game schedule is going to be for international play at least for this year and definitely for 2024 for the 15s to see if he can get that interim position removed and actually just be a head coach.
Hey everybody, this is just the Break Train sending out a personal little video diary to all you people out there where I am going to document me riding most of the way between Singapore and Tokyo for the 2019 Rugby World Cup.
I needed help, and it came from Louisiana.
We in Singapore, baby!
Gift from GiftTime Rugby USA is a extroverted tour de force. But what unites us is a hunger for adventure.
Off to KL, Kuala Lumpur. Yeah! Woo!
Gift, where are we?
We're in
Vietnam! Mount Fuji, baby!
Our love of Asian rugby culture.
1, 2, 3, settle!
Rugby is starting to develop here in Cambodia for women as well.
Valkyries, the mighty, mighty Valkyries!
We're out here, we're running out of energy, we're running out of money, and we're feeling isolated. And yet at that critical moment, friends, family, sometimes complete strangers come on board. Before you know it, we're back in the game.
Tokyo, here we come!
Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. Watch the full adventure at crugby.vhx.tv. That's C like SEE rugby.vhx.tv.
Speaking of USA Rugby news, some big news came out of MLR this week, and I am actually for this. Now, let me preface some stuff. Well, let's talk about what this is. MLR and Fox Sports, who they've been partnering with for the last couple years already in streaming and broadcasting games, announced that MLR games will actually be on the national broadcast. What does that mean? FS1, the one that the cable stations actually get. Like, you can get just normal cable and get that, or you can stream it easy, as well as FS2, which I think this one is a big deal. If it's on FS1, I am beginning to believe that they're actually making business decisions. And I remember watching actually a little podcast clip from Dallin Stanford's podcast.
It was Full Context CEO podcast with Alex Magleby. My bad. Just wanted to make sure you got that correction.
With George Killebrew talking about, well, it looks like this year the owners actually want to create business and actually want to make business decisions as opposed to just trying to make the product on the field the most product on the field, like just trying to improve the product on the field. They're actually trying to do it.
You know, we face things in our first year here that we now understand a lot better, and it just feels like we're more of a well-oiled machine, still knowing that going into year 6, you're going to have curveballs at the head, you know, that you weren't expecting and you got to duck out of the way of and handle. But I get that sense. I get that sense in the ownership group. I feel like everyone now is kind of settled in. They know what it takes to be successful as a business. They know they have to pay attention to the fundamentals, not just the rugby operations. They got to look at all the mundane things that we do day to day, like ticket sales and sponsorship sales and marketing and local broadcast agreements and community relations and all those things that go into, you know, the front office of a team. And I feel like there's a more of appreciation for that today with our groups, rather than I just want to put the best team on the field and try to win the Shield.
So I am led to believe, even though it has not officially been announced, that there was at least some level of a production deal made. Now, if as a media distribution deal made. Now, does that mean that they're making that FS1 Fox, in essence, is actually going to be paying out major money to MLR? Maybe not, but they might be paying for the production cost, which would be hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of 18, 20 weeks of gameplay. That's significant. That takes away some of the huge debts that are going to be existing with MLR coming into this year. But the fact that they're going to have their opening games February 18th on Fox Sports itself, I think that is a really big step forward. It allows it where the league has a chance to be able to continue to build credibility. And in this era where basically cable only exists for sports, yes, you got, your scripted TV, but everybody knows scripted TV goes to streaming, which is becoming more ad centralized. And so to move it now into the Fox broadcast position, though it's ironic that we're going into more streaming and ad subsidized streaming, and now MLR is going up to broadcast. I don't know. It's part of me is like, hey, I need you guys to trust us on all levels. But that's neither here nor there. I'm a conspiracy this thing. But it is a much wider range. And this is where I actually feel like when people talk about reach that these brands have, I think broadcast TV has a far better reach in terms of your immediate audience, because it is a less decisive decision and more of a searching decision. Though I am still massively advocate that streaming is the first place where it should go. And I do like the fact that this deal does not negate the games that are going to still be on the Rugby Network, which I think should be the primary place where games are. They did say that there will be a 24-hour delay for games that are existing on FS1 to be back onto the Rugby Network itself, which I'm happy about, because I know for me, I had a lot of difficulties being able to watch games on Saturday. I have a lot of conflict, a lot of it is church and stuff like that, conflict for that day. And so being able to watch games after, like on Sunday or later on Sunday, the games that were Saturday games, watching them on Sunday, made it easy to do. But it was super annoying whenever there were games that they just removed them all because contractual issues probably with FS2 to hold it over for like 1 or 2 days. And, I do the rugby odds with JBL and Matt McCarthy and the random guests that we'll have in that circulation. And so trying to analyze games became increasingly difficult because you can't go back and look at the games until like basically the next set of games are about to come out, which doesn't help whenever you record on a Monday or a Tuesday to get things done. So I'm hoping that this continues that process, and it does make it easier to be able to see the games, and which means also hopefully that the ones that are on FS1 also make it onto Fox Sports streaming website and able to create a better connection between this. This is a good move. This is a good move, continuing to use the bigger platform, but finally getting onto their primary platform. I've always been critical of it, simply because I think that you should have, in this era, you need to have autonomy on your platform. If you don't own your platform and you're not working as a media company, especially in sports, you are putting yourself at a massive disadvantage. So this plus what they're doing with FS1, kudos. Big ups to the MLR for this decision and for them starting to make more business decisions. The HBCU Rugby Classic is right around the corner. March 31st to April 2nd at Howard University in beautiful Washington, D.C. We're bringing the best HBCUs, best high school teams out playing some of the best rugby. And of course, it is a cultural event, so we're going to make sure to give you guys the best entertainment, from step shows to music to some of the best bands that we have in the area. So guys, I think you need to go ahead, get your tickets. Just run over to hbcurugbyclassic.com. Tickets available now starting at $25 for the weekend, $10 per day. And you guys can get a cacophony of great time and memories going through it. Definitely check us out. Stay tuned, and of course, jump onto our mailing list, hbcrugbyclassic.com/newsletter and get into the community so you can learn about the players, you can learn about what's going on a day-to-day and what we have updating, any discounts, any prizes that are coming up, and of course announcements and updates. It's going to be the best. I can't say anything more about this. Morehouse, Prairie View, A&M, Howard University. Let's get it, baby. Let's go. And speaking of business decisions, we got a little bit of another announcement that came through for MLR. All right, this one I find to be interesting, considering that I live in Brazil. It stands out, but I think Miami might be getting a franchise. This year we saw the rise and the bringing in of the Chicago Hounds earlier this year, obviously at the cost of LA and Austin. And I'm not going to lie, it's a little funny every time you see a new team announcement and all the Gilgronis people are just like, but what about us? And, they're real. Like, I get it. It's just, you guys are feeling, all the Austin Gilgronis people must be feeling like how the Cleveland Browns did whenever they got moved to Baltimore in 1995. Like, how low-key, where you just feel cut from underneath you just because of some BS and malfeasance that occurred. But this Miami possible franchise, this one interests me in multiple ways. Not only is it going to be another foreign owner, because actually this is the main reason. It's a foreign owner. And I actually have no problem with foreign owners owning teams, especially rugby teams in the U.S. Take advantage. But this guy is legit, all right? This is Marcos Galperin. Marcos Galperin, he's an Argentinian. He is the founder of Mercado Libre. Now, in the U.S., you're not going to know who Mercado Libre is. But in Brazil and in South America, particularly Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, Mercado Libre is basically the South American equivalent of Amazon. And when I tell you that they have a chokehold on this area, I mean, it is the chokehold on it. I've tried to order stuff through Amazon. It takes forever and a day to come down to Brazil. But through Mercado Libre, within a couple days, they own it. And the founder and the owner of this company now is going to put a franchise in Miami. One of the most show affluent towns in the U.S. Of course, huge Latin American base in Miami. So I think that probably plays heavily into it. But I'm loving this because I feel like this might be the first MLR franchise that will create a team that matches the behavior and the characteristics of the city it lives in. Now, what do I mean by that? So we've had these teams. We got teams, obviously, in New England region. We have it in D.C. We have it in Atlanta, New Orleans, throughout California, Houston, Dallas. But with all these teams, while the audience obviously comes from the area, Seattle, obviously, I forgot as well. While the audience plays in, while the owners, are connected to the region, I don't ever feel like any of these teams represent in terms of like a similar characteristic to the towns that they're in. Like, it just doesn't feel. It feels like they are teams that are located in those cities. But if you took it out of those cities, you could put them anywhere and it'd be basically the same thing. I want to see teams that actually feel like their team. And this guy being Argentinian, and Argentinians, if you know Argentinians, and I know a few, they are extra in their own way. Of course, we see after the World Cup, but, they're extra in their own way. But this would be in Miami, in Latin America, the North American component of it. Like, I feel like we would feel a Miami team, regardless of whoever the players are that come to it, whether it is more Latin American players, whether it's American players, whether it's New Zealanders or whatever, that team is going to feel like it is a Miami team. And I think they're going to have to, because Miami is not an easy market to put a sports team in. Like, if you actually look at the history of Miami, outside of like the Hurricanes, which are actually located outside of Miami in Coral Gables, and maybe the early days of the Dolphins, like most Miami teams don't do well. They don't. We see it. The Heat were really not doing that great until LeBron and the trio came through. LeBron, obviously, Dwayne Wade was already there, and Chris Bosh coming in, and then you saw this resurgence of energy that came with the team, and there was a connection because they were winners. The baseball team the Marlins are amongst the worst baseball teams in the league. Like they don't, and their attendance is terrible. The Dolphins always had a history of it, but right now the Dolphins are mediocre. They got a playoff, but even they have struggled with attendance issues for their games. So the reason why is not because Miami fans are inherently like bad sports fans, but it's just there's a lot to do in Miami. Like, it's the same issue that LA has, Atlanta had to some extent. While ironic that Atlanta gets every sporting event ever, it's still ironic. But they're not bad. It's just there's a lot to do, and you have to really connect with the town to actually make sure you're doing it. And that is a town that has not just a huge Latin American base. Obviously, it is a very multicultural city. Region. I'm going to say region because I'm going to include Miami, but it's really Miami, including Fort Lauderdale, including West Palm Beach, including some of those surrounding areas, maybe a little bit of Naples, maybe the bottom part of Naples. Okay, we're not going to include Naples in that at all. But really, definitely West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale, Miami, like that is going to be their base. And that is like African-American, Haitian, Hispanic, primarily Cuban, and then Brazilians all up in that region. And you need to focus on being able to bring out the full characteristics for them to ride for you. And I know the Florida people are going to be really excited. Florida has a state that has remarkably decent rugby. Like, they're pretty proficient. The one problem they have is that they're so regionally distant from most of the power base of the U.S. rugby community that you don't get to see them play a lot of cross competition unless you're seeing it in a playoff game or you see Florida players playing for other teams in the playoffs. So this one is going to be interesting, but it's going to be hinged so much on the fact that the characteristic of the team, I believe, is got to match Miami. And, if you're coming in from Argentina, you are one of the richest people in South America off of this amazing company or this, what you want to call it what it is. It's a monopoly of a company, to say the least, in South America. Like, I think they're going to bring some flavor. I think it's going to be something extra, and I hope that catches on consistently. Going back to what we were talking about before, take care of the business. Take care of the business. The business is absolutely real. Before I let you guys get back to it, I want you guys to go check out rugbyoutletmall.com. This is the place where we are bringing in casual rugby wear. We're trying to set up the designs, make sure that we are giving you something to represent rugby. That's not just a jersey, and that's not just your kit. It is something that you and your friends and your mama and your kids and your parents and your best friend and your wife and your husband and your boyfriend and girlfriend and your they, and just make sure that everybody is able to rock some rugby gear without having to necessarily be stuck to any one type of rugby gear. We want it for your day-to-day, everyday life. I know that's redundant, but that's how beautiful we want it to be. Definitely check out our most recent update, our Rugby Swag Show shirts. They're available now for purchase. You guys can get it. And for any first-time buyers, I'm talking to you. I'm giving you guys 20% off the first purchase. Take as many as you want, 20% off the first purchase. And of course, if you guys get on the newsletter, you guys are going to see more coupons and discounts that come along with that as well too. But 20% off, and all you guys need to use is coupon code GROWRUGBY. That is GREAUX Rugby. Great quality gear, definitely something for your present, something to be able to give. Obviously, we just got past the year, so that means birthdays are coming out. Valentine's Day is just around the corner, and you have so much more. Hook your family, hook your people up with what's right. Hook your people up with what's right. Go to rugbyoutletmall.com and enjoy out, and of course, it helps support the show and our media endeavors. Let's get you back. Let's talk American Raptors, because we got some news about the Super Rugby America schedule, and that news is that it got released. All right, we know first games are coming on February 18th, which I still haven't seen where they're supposed to be playing their games, like showing the games. I know that the Raptors said that they will show their home games, obviously, on their website, but to have a February 18th game that is directly in competition with the MLR, it's bold. I appreciate boldness. I don't know if it really means, maybe it's not even that bold because we don't really know the ratings match, but at least, you're trying to bring something. But we got the matches, and for the American Raptors, like, this is one of those where, it's a favorable travel schedule. It looks like they're really trying to make sure that they can keep it in the realm of making it cost effective as it should be. So from what it looks like off of the first month of play for the Raptors, they're on the road. I'll put the post up in the description, but they're basically on the road for 4 weeks straight, and then they get to be at home for 4 weeks straight. And then it splits between the last 4 games for them to be able to split it home and away, which I think that's good. That month is gonna be tasking on the players, just traveling between countries. If anybody knows what it's like having to travel on the road, that thing wears down on you like crazy. But I love the fact that they are at least trying to put themselves in a position where they are not going to over-leverage themselves on trying to bounce up and down between it. It's good business. And I don't even think that probably a lot of these countries were going to be able to maintain that schedule, since the majority of them obviously exist in South America, if not the majority, literally all of them, except for American Raptors. Now, one thing coming from the camp was being able to get the new rosters together. And I felt like, there's people that were murmuring a little bit about the addition of some non-U.S. players in there. And honestly, I'm kind of glad that the American Raptors aren't doing 100% U.S. players, but they're doing the majority. What Eagles Overseas, the account on Twitter, Eagles Overseas, I think they do Twitter Spaces and stuff like that on Twitter. They said that in looking at the roster, they counted off about 39 U.S. eligible players that were on there. This is a preseason roster of about 46. It's on there. That's awesome. And then for the fact that at least some of the biggest players that they signed, I think the big one is Diego Magnu, who is an Argentinian player. He used to play for Toronto. He was like the best player for Toronto last year. It looks like he's moved over and starting to be playing for the American Raptors on this. I think that's great. What's the best way of being able to add a talent and skill, not talent, but skill to a roster that is crossover athletes building up their skill to become more dominant in this sport? Bring in the single most capped player in America's, I'm talking about North and South history. Like, that's legit. Also want to shout out, because it might not be as big a name, but he's a big name to me. My boy, Will Crawford. He used to play for Houston SaberCats, Louisiana Tech guy. I've known him for, we talking about 12 years now? talking about almost 12 years now. I'm happy for him. Get a chance to play on this roster, and I hope that he gets to make it onto the team and to the travel squad and go do some damage. A guy who made a dream for himself, said, I want to play rugby, and has been on that journey from day one. And coming from Louisiana Tech, that is tough because there is a lot that goes into it. But, big shout out to him. But back to this roster, I'm glad that they're adding people who are not necessarily going to be U.S. eligible, but they can push the U.S. eligible kids, the U.S. eligible players. This is all you want. This is what it's asked for. For them having separated out from the MLR a couple years back, this was what they were aiming for. We want to be able to push for the most amount of U.S. eligible players that we're able to develop and increase into the USA international stream and make impact across the international rugby community and then such. So a big shout out to the American Raptors for putting together just an element that they want to develop and see everybody win. That's all we want to be able to do. We want to be able to see the U.S. and the development of it win because it wins for everybody. So I love that. Wanted to throw some of this out there for you guys. Yo, I want to talk to you about the company Green Geeks, one of our sponsors for this show. And let me tell you, I am a huge fan of Green Geeks. I built all my website platforms off of Green Geeks. And what is Green Geeks? It's one of the best hosting servers in the world, easily. It's eco-friendly, it's cost-effective, it is consistent, and it just gives you access to everything. A lot of people go to things like Squarespace or Wix to be able to do their hosting, utilize maybe even GoDaddy hosting, but all of them are always limited. I've looked at the pricing of them, and I don't feel like they give you the same flexibility that Green Geeks has actually personally given to me. With Green Geeks, it uses the platform WordPress, which is a standard website development platform, and in this era, where we need to absolutely not be reliant solely on social media to be able to hold our information. We know the algorithms change all the time, but it also is important that we have a destination that is our own home to go to. But even with Green Geeks, they not only help you with being able to build up the website, give you a process to get the website. You can make as many emails as you want. You can become far more search engine optimized. And you are able to create things from econ stores to just information to whatever you need to under the WordPress. And you get it almost as a WordPress premium and not just a basic WordPress plan. So you have access to thousands of templates and thousands of plugins to be able to make sure that you have the best website to be able to promote for what you need to do. And the best way that you can get for your first year at $2.95 per month to have all of that. All you need to do is go to our link, greengeeks.com/track/GiftTime, and you will get basically 80% off your first year of hosting on the website, on the server. If you have not been able to create a website or the consistency or be able to develop, maybe even work as other businesses, whether it's an agency, whether it's for other industries, just utilize Green Geeks. They'll help you, and their customer service is bar none. They've helped me so many times in issues that I've had with the website, things that didn't go through. They helped walk me through it perfectly, and I have nothing to complain. Definitely check out greengeeks.com/track/GiftTime or hit the link in the description and start your first steps or your second steps into getting control on your own website and your own information and not being a slave to the tech companies like Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and all that. Own your home. Get it today. All right, so last segment coming in, just a little bit of rugby business and a little questionnaire for you. First and foremost, I want to throw some rugby business out there. think right now we are, if you guys know, we got HBCU Rugby Classic happening March 31st to April 2nd. Got some big things happening. We got some major announcements coming up very, very, very soon. Tickets are available now. $25 for the full weekend, $10 per day. It's 3 days, obviously. We include our HBCUs and our high school tournaments inside there, and looking just to be able to create some of the best entertainment that we can have on in the field itself. But in doing this, if you guys know, putting any event, you got to be able to get your lifeblood. Your lifeblood is working with businesses, is media rights, it's everything. I will say that this year might be the year that I'm going to make a hot take that rugby and people in rugby can make the biggest leap in their value add. Why? Because we're entering into the fear of the recession mode right now. This whole quarter has been fear of the recession. Hey, what's going to happen? People tightening up their purses. We all know about the tech companies that are laying off people. What was it? Amazon laid off 18,000 people. Meta laid off 10%. We're seeing it even in smaller companies. Like, we're seeing big layoffs in a lot of industries that are developed for massive increase of growth, but not profit. Why does that impact what rugby does? Well, because right now, a lot of companies need to make sure that they are actually reaching to an exact audience. And we need to make sure that we are actually fulfilling, because we have an audience. There's a value add. Part of the process of reducing ourselves from our rugby insecurity is to know that we have a product that people will want to watch, or we have to create it. But it's in these moments is where your true value ends up playing out for the next 10 years. If there's a recession, those who make money in the recession fly and swarm. So for me, I know I've had to work really hard to make sure that I'm implying the value that comes from what we do, whether it's from GiftTime Media or whether it's from the HBCU Rugby Classic directly, and knowing that we're not just talking about creating value for today, but creating value over the next 10 years. And I think a lot of you who are in working rugby organizations, building rugby companies like myself, or our players, need to make sure that you are creating a pitch that says you are going to deliver this. It can't just be, hey, you're on the jersey itself. It's not 1950s, okay? Remember, it's not the 1950s. You have to also put it around on places. You have to push it. You have to create stories around it. Whatever it is the awareness of whatever the brand that is going to be working with you, that you're going to be partnering with. You need to make sure that you are actively getting it to where they need it to be. That's your audience. And in that same process, you're growing your audience and filtering it out towards them. That's the magic that sports has. That's why broadcasts are basically now becoming, for lack of a better word, well, I'm not going to use the word, but subjected to the power that sports has, because we bring in a filtered audience through that. So I want you to remember that as you continue to craft your sponsorship template, your emails, your product measurements. Like, it needs to be more than you just posting on social media. Like, you have to go out and you have to talk. Watch a thing, I think this was on Valuetainment, was a great way of saying it, but I've experienced this myself, is that this is the time where you have to be intentional about who you're going to go reach out to. You got to make the calls, you got to make the emails, and you got to make the calls. Like, you got to make the calls and you got to get there in person. If you can get there in person, get there in person. If you can make the calls, make the calls. And these are the hardest parts. If you want to be able to, if you can just simply do the emails, well, make sure that those emails are dynamic enough where people are going to schedule with you, because then you have to go make the calls. And this is going to be a big launch to changing how we change our insecurity about rugby here in the country, in the U.S., and definitely how it affects what we do over the course of the next 2, 3, 4 years. Big deal. And look, if you guys need any help with any of it, go to gifttimemedia.com, put some information out there for you. You guys can schedule a consultation. That one is actually paid, but the information I'll put for free out there if it helps. And then if you need some more execution points, definitely hit me up. But I'm dead serious. This is the year that we need to be focusing on cultural characteristics of rugby that are uniquely to our culture. And then being able to develop the business side of rugby. Like, everyone talks growth. It's hard. Anybody who does youth rugby can tell you it is very, very difficult to do youth rugby without resources. It is very, very difficult to make people stay as a volunteer without resources. It's very, very difficult to be able to travel the way that you need to without resources. So to be able to do that, it has to be more than you either begging, or it has to be more than you saying that this is the right thing to do, or it has to be more than you saying this is going to be printed up on such and such thing. Like, work the emotion, but don't forget there is a logic that you want to be able to build behind it. So if you need any help, definitely hit me up on that. The second thing that I want to finish off with is, Perry Baker. Perry Baker's been on a Twitter game lately, and I'm, for one, am loving it. He's been posting, and I feel like he's working himself into trying to be a better influencer. I don't know whether he's got a brand deal that happened or he's just got time on his hand, but he's been creating some intriguing questions. And this one I thought was really, really good. And I'm going to let you guys get your response. I want to hear your responses on it, either on GiftTime Rugby, on Instagram at GiftTime Rugby, or on the comments in the Apple Music, and you can find it on Facebook, but who's super using Facebook that much? But the question was, if rugby players made as much money as American football players and soccer players, it probably wouldn't have the same athletes, in his opinion. But then, would rugby be the same far as characteristics? What he's asking is, if rugby players made the same amount, so if we're talking about American football players, you're either saying if you take the average, let's say, NFL salary, which is, according to NBC Sports, is $2.7 million, and you take the average, let's say, I'm going to go Premier League, because I think Premier League soccer has the highest average, maybe the best of them. So the average salary of a Premier League soccer player, football, but association football, soccer, get it correct. All right, same thing. The British created it. But the average Premier League soccer player is 6.79 million British pounds, which is just about $7.5-8 million per year. How would that impact rugby? Would the characteristic of rugby be the same? And in my opinion, I don't think it changes the characteristics of rugby, but it definitely does change the athletes, which Perry Baker said. It probably wouldn't have the same athletes. You'd have a much higher tier level of athletes getting in there from the men's side. And God forbid on the women's side, that would just be double down. I actually think there would be a massive brain drain from a lot of sports, namely from basketball. And I think we would see a lot of field hockey players crossing over there. Though I don't think there would be a lot of MMA players, because MMA is so independent that I don't think it would be beneficial to them. But I think in team sports, you'd see it from field hockey and you'd see it from basketball. You'd see a turnover there. But women have a pretty high level amount of athletes. But I don't think it would change the characteristics of the game. This is why. The characteristics of the game can be built into the culture. Money reveals and maybe enhances how much those characteristics get implied. But if you're thinking that players are going to be more entitled or more, what's the best way to say it? More entitled or become ruder like the stereotype is, I'm going to break it to you. Rugby players are assholes too. Like, have you watched them talk to coaches? Like, you had a whole, the Marler guy in England had a thing about, saying he slept with some player's mother whose mother has cancer. Like, yo, players are assholes now and they don't make nothing. So I actually think that to some extent, if there's not a small pie, I think the only thing that changes might be the level of willingness to break the body for the game. And honestly, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think there's always going to be toughness because in any contact sport, you're going to play tough. And whenever you go against somebody who loves the sport and is going to crush you, and they'll do it for free or they'll do it for all the money in the world, it's going to humble you. And if you know that you're making more money off of your championships, it's going to motivate you. Now, does it say that there's going to be players who aren't really that interested in the game that are only going to be playing it for the money? Of course, but that already exists now. And it's not even that much. It already exists. There's already legacy players, generational players who have families who've been playing for ages. There's people who all their country does is just rugby. There's people who are in it because it gives them enough of a living to get by, and they just get through. That doesn't change with the level of money. What would end up changing is the notoriety of the game itself. And now what would actually end up changing is how much expectations and pressures would come on the game. Now, I do think that there would be a strong reduction in the level of access that people have to rugby players right now. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes you need to filter the people. We know from the internet, too many voices can create a problem, but not enough voices can also be a big issue. I'm going to be on my World Rugby hater stuff again. But I think the only real issue what I would have is like a organization like World Rugby getting too greedy and trying to essentially run as a monopoly, which, again, to some extent, I think they're already trying to do, but thankfully there's factions that don't allow it to overrun too much. But yeah, I think that would be the only issue that, would World Rugby now become more like FIFA and be far more susceptible to problems? Yeah, I think that could be a real thing. But in terms of the game itself, in terms of the character of the people that are going to be playing, I still think it's going to be right where it is. Like from a grassroots level, you'll still have anybody anybody type, any people can play. The motivation and the filters of the people are going to increase. There might be a slight reduction in adult club leagues, simply because of the fact that a lot of those best players are going to transition to try and be in the top leagues, trying to make a real effort and money. But again, if you end up finding ways to either use clubs as a practice environment or be able to open up for training environments for grassroots and other elements, I think it does add a different level of an ecosystem. So I would definitely be for it, but I don't think it would be the gloom and doom that people would. I don't think there would be, that people would think that comes with money. And I think that fear of making a quality living, and not even a quality living, excelling past a point. I personally don't think that that's a healthy way of thinking. And I think that actually helps reduce the impact and the elevation of the game. It's that old school elite, British mindset of if you get paid for it, you don't understand the spirit of the game. That's complete and utter nonsense. So I'm with it. I think it would be great. It would, like I said, it would be something to go off of. But y'all, that's all we got for today. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to pay attention to this. Hope you guys have a great week. Please don't forget to check out some of our other episodes. We've had some great guests. We had Isaiah Washington, Southern University. We've had Mick Feely of Citizen Sports Rugby. We've had Blaine Scully, captain for the USA Rugby squad. We've had Tiffany Faye, captain for the USA Rugby squad. We've had Adam Hayward, who actor for the movie Play On. We've had Squidge, Squidge Rugby, who great YouTuber. we take it all around because we believe in everything that has to do with building rugby and building around the sport to create that ecosystem and talking to the right people. And of course, we have our other episodes. You guys are just catching up. But needless to say, I hope you guys are going to take care of yourselves. You guys have a great week. And most importantly, I hope that I hope that you're happy. I hope that you're healthy. And the most important of it all, I hope that you know that you are highly favored. Until next time, y'all. Cheers.